Today we're going to talk about how to buy a house in Puerto Rico. I'm going to read through the top 10 questions people ask on the Google machine. I was looking for something else and I saw all these questions on Google about what people are asking about how to buy a house in Puerto Rico. So I'm going to answer all those questions for you today. A lot of these answers from the Google machine are from articles from 2014, and they're from real estate companies who are trying to sell you properties, and they're from relocation companies that are trying to get your money to pay them to relocate to Puerto Rico. So I'm going to read through these questions and give you the answers from somebody who's A, bought property in Puerto Rico, B, in the middle of remodeling property in Puerto Rico, and C, has nothing to gain from giving you the honest answers of the answers to your questions about buying properties in Puerto Rico. I'm pointing at my laptop because it's over there because I'm about to pick it up and read the questions. So if you're wondering why I keep pointing over there, that's why. It doesn't make sense when you see this. But anyway, I'm going to tell you my honest answers of the top 10 questions people ask on the Google machine about buying property in Puerto Rico. The only, I guess, full disclosure caveat I could give, I'm not trying to sell you a course or anything. I've had a couple people reach out to me and ask for coaching on how to buy property in Puerto Rico. And I do have a couple people that are paying me to coach them, but I'm not actively looking for coaching clients. If you're interested, you can contact me, but I'm not actually, that's not why I'm doing this video. So I'm going to pick up my laptop and let's go through the questions that the people are asking on the Google machine. Question number 1. Can a U.S. citizen buy property in Puerto Rico? Yes, it's just, from this standpoint, it's just like buying a property in any other state. The process is a little bit different. It's not as easy. But as far as U.S. citizens buying property in Puerto Rico, nothing to worry about. It's just like buying a property in Iowa or Texas or wherever. It doesn't matter where you live. How much down payment is required to buy a house in Puerto Rico is the second one. Now this one, I did not actually get financing in Puerto Rico, but I did talk to a couple of Puerto Rican banks. You do need to use a bank in Puerto Rico to lend in Puerto Rico. If you live in Texas, you can't just call a Texas Federal Bank and have them do a loan for you in Puerto Rico. You do need to use a bank in Puerto Rico. There's a couple of banks that do business in the mainland and in Puerto Rico. And everybody I talked to said the process of getting a loan in Puerto Rico is just mind-bendingly horrible. Takes forever. The paperwork, the slow. It's a really bad process. What I did was I did a little cash out refi on a property that I didn't owe any money on in Florida. I pulled a little bit of money out of my house in Florida to pay cash for the house in Puerto Rico. So you could get a HELOC if you own a primary residence in the U.S. in the mainland and you want to buy a second home or a vacation rental. I would look at ways to pay cash in Puerto Rico. There is lending available if you need it. You can do it. Just it takes a while and it's a little bit painful. But that didn't answer the question. The question was how much you have to put down. And typically the answer is you need to put 20% down in Puerto Rico. And I remember from the banks that I talked to, it usually seemed like you need 20%. So I count on that. You can call around. You might find something different. But I count on probably putting down 20%. The third question is it smart to buy a house in Puerto Rico? You know the phrase, there's no such thing as a dumb question? That's not true. There are dumb questions. And this is a perfect example of a dumb question. Is it smart to buy I don't know. What's your situation? What are you trying to accomplish? Do you want to live there? Do you want to rent it? Do you want a vacation there? That's a dumb question. It's worded incorrectly. It should say, is it a good investment to buy a house in Puerto Rico? Again, too many variables. Like, I don't know what your situation is. So we'll just use this as the example of a dumb question. The next question is, how much does the average house cost in Puerto Rico? The average house, again, this could be a little bit subjective. And this is the one, the answer in the Google machine is from December 18th, 2014. And the answer was $175,000 to $319,000. That's quite a spread for an average. I read something else that said the average price was $160,000. Again, the average is subjective. Are you looking to buy a house in Rincon or in Palmas del Mar or in Utuado or in San Juan or wherever? So you can't say what an average price is. It's like saying, what's the average the average price of a house in Texas? Well, there's a big difference between an 8-bedroom mansion in Corpus Christi and a 2-bedroom condo. Are there condos in Odessa? I don't know. There's a big difference there. So I paid $135,000 for my house in Puerto Rico. I'd say the entry point for condos in San Juan is like 150. Just depends on what you're looking for. So this is not it's too general. The next question says, how much money do you need to live comfortably in Puerto Rico? These people are horrible question askers. So again, it depends on where you're going to live, what kind of lifestyle you want to have. But here's the advantages that I found to Puerto Rico. The housing is less expensive in Puerto Rico than in Florida, where I own most of my rental properties. My shirt's messed up. Or in the Virgin Islands, where I live now, it's way cheaper for housing. So depending on if you want to live in Dorado, it's not way cheaper. I don't even think the high-end luxury market, I think, is probably comparable with places like Florida. If you're coming from somewhere like California, you might think it's cheaper, less expensive. I never use the word cheaper when we talk about real estate. But cost of living, I think food, gas, those type of things are pretty much in line with the mainland U.S., like in Florida where I'm from. You're not going to save a ton of money there. There's a 10% sales tax there. So every time you go to the grocery store and prices seem okay, and then you check out and you add another 10% on. So everything you buy, there's an extra 10% sales tax. So keep that in mind. But for the most part, most things, I don't think there's a huge difference in cost of living for most things that you're going to buy in Puerto Rico versus, like, I'm comparing most things to Florida because I lived in Florida for 10 years. Can I move to Puerto Rico to avoid taxes? Yes and no. Again, depends on what kind of taxes you're trying to avoid paying. If you're a crypto guy, if you're a day trading gal, you can avoid paying capital gains taxes. If you're a business owner and you want to move a business to Puerto Rico, you can avoid basically paying corporate taxes there. There's a whole nother video. I did a video on Act 60. You can go, I'll link to it up here, that explains more in detail, but Google the Act 60 and that'll tell you what taxes you can avoid in Puerto Rico. You don't just move to Puerto Rico and stop paying taxes. That's not how it works. What is the cheapest place to live in Puerto Rico? Again, somewhere in the interior. You want to be in a beach town, it's going to cost more. You want to be in the mountains, it's probably going to cost less. You know, there's some towns that are nicer than other towns. The nicer towns are going to cost more than the less nice towns. You can buy probably a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house that's livable in a lot of places for maybe $40,000 in Puerto Rico if you're willing to get out of the major urban areas that most people that are moving to Puerto Rico want to be in. Can I afford to live in Puerto Rico? That wins the dumb question of the day award right there. I'm just going to skip that. Pretend like I never even said that. Well, that was only 9. Those are the top 9 questions that came up on the page 1 of the Google. So I'll throw in one more, which is, where do I find a house to buy in Puerto Rico? And the best place to start your search is in clasificadosonline.com. I'll put it here, clasificadosonline.com. And point2homes.com. I always call it point to point, but it's not. It's point2homes. I finally got it right, and then I still said it wrong. So point2homes.com is another place to look, and you should be able to do a little bit of Googling and get into the MLS. You can look on Zillow and Realtor, but not as many people use those because most of the realtors don't use those. So a lot of the information doesn't get put in there. Like buying a house in Puerto Rico doesn't work like buying a house in the mainland. There's no really buyer's agents. I'm not going to get into all of it. I have other videos on the subject, and this was just the top 10 questions in the Google machine. If you have more questions, leave them down below. If enough people ask questions, I'll do a part 2 to this video, and I'll answer all of your questions in that. If you have a simple question, I might just type it in. But those are the top 10 questions that Google says are what people are most interested in. If you found some value in this, give me a thumbs up on it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. And I've got lots of other videos on buying a house in Puerto Rico if you're interested. And if I haven't covered what you're interested in, leave me a comment. I'll get to it. Thanks. See you in the next video.